Esto no es un arreglo. El único arreglo que esto tiene es, mira, que la gente se vaya, los que puedan. Y los que no puedan, como nosotros los viejos, seguir aquí, machacando, machacando.
Uno está acostumbrado a que haya sus apagones normales, pero no que eso fuera así de tan impresionante de momento, que se dijera que era la isla total y que iba a demorar y que se iba a extender el problema. Todo el mundo se limitó a proteger lo suyo, a cerrarlo todo. Eso sí, de verdad que nos puso un poquito preocupados.
Call on Allah, Yahweh, Yasharahla, Kadash, double honor to the Apostle Elsewhere Millstone, peace, citation, hope for life. And I'm gonna get into this article real quick, and it says why Cuba's in the dark. It says this is by Javier Corrales, October 30, 2024. The extended blackouts reflect what might be the nation's worst collapse since independence. Cubans played dominoes in dark during a nationwide blackout on October 18th. Yeah, and the reading time is about 5 minutes in this article, so it's not really much. It says Cuba has just undergone long, brutal days of total blackout. The renewed power outages represent more than just an energy crisis. They're a sign of a grave systematic crisis. Cuba's economy, not just the energy sector, is in the midst of its worst collapse, perhaps since the independence in 1902. The current crisis is arguably worse than the calamitous crash of the early 1990s, the so-called special period, when the Cuban economy shrank by more than a third over 4 years. That's not just because of the depth of the current decline, but also because it's occurring when the baseline is already low. Since the 2010s, Cuba has been experiencing consumer good scarcity, rapid inflation, declining investments, productivity shortfalls, agricultural deficits, falling wages, and yes, repeated power outages. In addition, poverty and inequality are at an all-time high. Since at least before the pandemic, Cubans have endured chronic power outages. A typical outage will last approximately 8 hours, and they were happening often between 2018 and 2022. Cuba's capacity to generate electricity, never too impressive, fell by almost a quarter. Rather than develop alternatives to hydrocarbon fuels, which Cuba lacks, Cuba has preferred to rely on oil imports. Plant failures began to multiply, exacerbating the outages. In a sign of desperation, the government in 2022 allowed Cubans to import up to 2 personal power generators after paying a 30% tax, which is a big help, but it benefits those who can travel abroad or have overseas visitors. Then came the mid-October energy collapse. For almost 4 days, the country experienced a series of complete blackouts, and the entire electric grid collapsed at least 3 consecutive times. For a country as poor as Cuba, blackouts mean more than just people staying home and enduring brutal heat and humidity. Without power, food spoils quickly. Cooking is impossible without charcoal or wood, both which are scarce. Many frozen meats become unusable. Water itself becomes scarce and cannot be easily boiled for safe drinking. Disease spreads quickly, and so does crime. Recovery is not easy in a country where stores are scarce and famous for their empty shelves, long lines, and unaffordable prices. An empty refrigerator is a catastrophe that cannot be solved quickly and cheaply once power is restored. In short, power outages in poor countries are massive health, economic, and productivity crises. Root causes. The Cuban government has offered 2 versions of a root cause explanation. President Miguel Diaz-Canel blamed the U.S. embargo, Cuba's official explanation for everything that goes wrong. Vice President Manuel Marrero offered a different explanation, blaming infrastructure deterioration, lack of fuel, and increase in demand. Marrero's explanation is more on target. Cuba's energy crisis is not caused by the lack of trade opportunities caused by the embargo. Cuba maintains open trade relations with almost every country. In fact, Cuba has inviolable trade relations with two of the world's leading energy giants, Venezuela and Russia, and cordial relations with other local energy producers, Mexico, Brazil, Guyana, and Colombia. Cuba's power grid is heavily dependent on oil. Fuel shortages were a major contributor to the October blackouts. Oil 83.46%, natural gas 12.46%, biofuels 1.77%, solar photovoltaic 1.27%, hydro 0.77%, and wind 0.27%. Calculations based on data from International Energy Agency 2022. Neither is the issue a blockade of foreign investment led by the U.S. It is true that Donald Trump hardened the embargo, including returning Cuba in January 2021 to the list of the state sponsors of terrorism. While it seems that some investors in the West hesitate to invest in Cuba for fear of U.S. retaliation, foreign investment still happens at a pace that the Cuban government is comfortable with. In 2023, the government reported 334 foreign investment projects from 40 countries. 30 new projects were approved that year. Cuba also has allies that could help with infrastructure and care little about upsetting Washington, China in particular. The payment crisis. The reason Cuba is having problems with its allies is simple. Cuba cannot pay for imports or credits. Its government has no capacity to generate wealth domestically and externally. The country is experiencing an energy crisis because, as Vice President Marrero says, it is experiencing a resource crisis. Foreign fuel makes its way to the Cuban ports, but the Cuban government struggles to generate the money to make payments. A distortion of the system of property rights is at the heart of the current payment crisis. Since Fidel Castro came to power, Cuba has embraced a system of property rights predicated on the notion that the state alone can generate wealth. Under Castro, the Cuban state spent the 1960s curtailing private property rights to the point of essentially extinguishing private activities. By 1968, the state monopolized trade, investments, production, and most retail services. For a while after the Cold War, the government liberalized self-employment, but these liberalized sectors always came with enormous restrictions. Some of these regulations were relaxed in 2021 to allow small and medium-sized firms, but in 2024, new regulations were introduced, including banning the use of foreign currency. Small and medium-sized firms face onerous taxation, price controls, and restrictions on access to capital and agricultural activities. Private firms are growing in number, but the goods and services they can trade remain stagnant. Let me see. Pretty much don't want to get too much into. I'm gonna skip some. It says Cuba's lack of resource mobilization capacity impairs everything the state does, including generate power. No matter how much Cuba taxes, it fails to generate enough revenue. Tourism as an issue, the government finds itself in a severe fiscal trap. The state represses supply by restricting the private sector, which keeps growth and tax revenues depressed, forcing the state to engage in declining investments. Prior to the pandemic, investment in infrastructure averaged about 1.5% of gross domestic product, far below the average for Latin America of 2.6%. State investment is also lopsided. The bulk has been directed toward hotels and tourism, according to a post on X by economist Pedro Monreal. Tourism, a sector of the economy that contributes less than 1% to the GDP, receives more than 35% of investments. This leaves few resources for infrastructure, manufacturing, and agriculture. So yeah, without further ado, I'll bring out some scriptures and Lord willing make this lesson edifying. And before I start, I know my article is pretty long going into it. I just wanted to bring out the main important parts. But for the most part, like, one thing about me is that I know my mom is pretty much from this country, Cuba, and she came over from Cuba to this country by the age of 5 years old. So things is pretty much changing over there, and I haven't been there before, which I don't mind taking some point in time to visit. When I have the time, hopefully be safe, going over there, Lord willing. But pretty much my aunt is over there, and you know, she plans on coming over here to this country, America, but you know, it's kind of a tough process, and Lord willing, you know, just, you know, having my prayers to her to hopefully that she stays safe out there, because you know, there's a lot of atrocities that's happening, you know, given from the video that I brought out and even the article that I went into. But anyways, getting back to the scripture now, it says Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verse 4. It says, actually I'll start at verse 3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. So yeah, so you know, during the time of a crisis, usually when power grids go out, and even when you know, there's a financial crisis, you know, there's not going to be enough jobs to, you know, pretty much be given out. You know what I mean? And that causes the grinder to be low, and that's going to eventually cause for people to suffer storing their food, you know, storing beverages and things of that nature. Things is going to spoil quicker than usual, so it's not going to be easy to preserve food, and that leads to a high rise in crime. And this is 2nd Ezra chapter 15. Start at let me see, verse 14. It says, "Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up to fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition amongst men, invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And a man shall desire to go into the city and shall not be able, but because of their pride the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation." And that's pretty much what's happening over there at a certain level, because I mean, when you have it to where the government can't provide a solution to help people, what do you think people are going to do? You think they're going to just sit there and suffer and stay docile? Hell fucking no. They're going to have to basically fend for themselves, and you know, they're going to have to get their hands dirty, you know, to survive. You know what I mean? It's pretty much like in school. You know, you find that fucking bully that want to fuck with you and keep messing with you, and you see you trying to find staff members to try to reach out to let them know that, you know, a certain student is messing with you, and they're not trying to provide the solution. They just telling you ignore, telling you to, oh, just, you know, take it and whatever, or just like, you know, try to get away from them. But you see the person still trying to tailgate you, tailing you, messing with you. You're gonna have to get your hands dirty and knock the person out and fight back. You know what I mean? I know that's pretty much a different, you know, rough example, but of how these people are going to be taking actions in their own power, and they're going to be doing what the hell to get by, even if it's illegal and unlawful. But anyways, you know, going back to the scriptures, and I don't even think it's going to be easy to go over there in the country during the time of a financial crisis, and you know, during time of power outages and things of that nature, because it's like, you know, when shit is going bad in the country like that, you know, you want to basically be aware of the news, and you want to try to avoid traveling to a country that's really going through it, because it's going to be a high rise in crimes, and you know, you're going over there as a tourist. You know, you make it, you know, somebody going to stick you up, and of course, you know, citizens in that country are going to do whatever necessary crime to help them to survive. And you're not going to be able to go into a city like that, you know, And not only just not being able to, you may not even want to go to a city like that because of the high rise in crimes and power outages and things of that nature. And common sense is going to tell you not to do that. And yeah, because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Either way, this is judgment on why the Most High is doing these things. Well, because, we're his chosen people. And of course, when anything that happens to a particular city, or a state or a country, whatever, happens to the inhabitants in there, the Lord is not making a mistake when he does these things, whether he sends a natural disaster or whether he has Esau to use his heart machine or use his technology to cause terror upon these other countries. The Most High controls Esau. So regardless, this is the Heavenly Father trying to give let's say warnings to you Israelites that you have to repent and return to him. And if he has to cause masses of death, by way of certain calamities, the Most High is going to get your attention one way or another. He's going to bring down all type of pride. And in that time, nobody's going to have pity on their neighbor, because when you struggling and you starving and you see somebody doing better than you, whoever got it is going to be getting stuck up for whatever they got from the person that don't have it. And this is Habakkuk chapter 2, because this is also tying up with Esau, because what Trump did when he was in office. He pretty much imposed certain sanctions on Cuba that caused Cuba to suffer financially. And this is Esau being the devil he is. Countries he colonized, and then he want to put sanctions upon them and things of that nature, putting in certain embargoes on them. It says Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 4. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. And that's Esau right there, showing you that his soul is not upright in him, because Micah the 2nd chapter verse 1, they devise iniquity upon their beds, and this is the iniquity that's going to go into. Verse 5 says, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as deaf, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunt and proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. That's that thick clay. Going into that word abijah in the Hebrew, and that pretty much is going into the word debt. And it says, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them, because thou hast spoiled many nations, and all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land and of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Woe to him that have coveteth and evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. And this is Esau right here, colonizing countries, taking over countries that Jake is dwelling in, and then what Esau would do is he would kill their leaders that's in that country, that's against his NWO agenda, against his central banking dynasty. And what he would do is that he would put certain leaders in there to allow them to accept his NWO, his central banking system. This is what Esau would do. So they have these type of strategies set in place. There's only a very few countries that don't even have a central banking system, and they're pretty much using their form of their personalities to push out their propaganda against those countries that are against their NWO agenda. You know what I mean? But you see, all these countries are waking up to the truth that you Edomites, mainly in America, that y'all are the devils, and they're just waking up to Esau in general. And the funny thing is, Esau is such a house divided. You have the Russians against, the American Edomites as well. So, and y'all are just Edomites in general, and they're going, and the Russians are also against the Amalekites over there in the land of Israel. So yeah. So, and like it tells you in Ezekiel 38th chapter that there's certain countries, and even Russia is gonna be a guard unto those countries, and it's gonna be like a second Cold War, with Russia having their allies against the U.S. and the allies of the U.S. And this time, Russia's gonna be successful because, according to future prophecy in Jeremiah 50 and 51, all countries are gonna go against America for the wickedness that America's doing, and they're gonna bend all their arrows, which is talking about the nuclear missiles, against this country, America. And like the scriptures say, 200,000 upon 1,000 of missiles is gonna basically, I believe the word goes, warheads, if I'm not mistaken, in Revelation. That's going into how there's going to be over 200 million nuclear missiles shooting at this bitch America to blow it up, making sure that nothing is left, to make every bit of the land within America a wasteland, as it mentions in Jeremiah 50 and going in Isaiah the 13th chapter, that how it's going to be desert animals. And it's going to be as how Sodom and Gomorrah is now. And whatever is happening to Cuba right now is just a small trail of what's going to happen in America, because it's going to be it's going to be way worse in America, because America's like, people are not used to struggling. People are not used to suffering like how people do in third world countries like Cuba. And it's well deserved anyway, because these GMO people amongst us have to be fucking judged. And in this country, America has been so protected for so long, to the point where the scriptures even consider it as a virgin daughter of Babylon, meaning that it hasn't been invaded and it hasn't been touched by any nuclear missile. And all that is going to change very soon, because this country, it will get invaded, and there will be wars happening on this land, before the World War III takes place. And during the World War III, at some point, nuclear missiles will be shot at this country, and eventually in the midst of that, Yasharahla is going to return to deliver his elect. And with that, hope may let's edify, let's give all glory, praise, and honor to Adonai, Yahweh, Bashem, Shah, Malak, Yahweh, Shah, Bashem, Kakadash, to honor to the apostle, Elsbeth, Millstone, peace, I teach, full elect, Shalom.